Catherine Ballard is standing in a private aircraft hangar. She undresses and puts her breast against one of the jets. A man comes up behind her and undresses her before they start making love.
Ballard, you know who I mean? The producer of this epic?
A man is looking for James Ballard to sign some papers while he is in a camera room with a woman. Soon he joins his wife, Catherine. James is driving at night while checking some papers. He accidentally got on the other side of the lane and crashed into a car. The man from the car ends up in James's car, and James, while still inside, sees the man's wife. James ended up in a hospital where the ward was reserved for air crash victims. Catherine was with him, and she told him that the dead man's wife, Helen Remington, was a doctor, and that she could be there as a patient. She tells James that the man was a chemical engineer for a food company, and that maybe he could run into Helen in the hallway during one of his walks.
It's behind the station.
As expected, James runs into Helen in the hallway, but she walks past him when he calls her. A doctor approaches him and inspects his bruises. Back in his bed, James is joined by Catherine. She keeps explaining the condition of the car that crashed while they are touching each other. James stops her and confesses that he wishes he went to the funeral. He asks Catherine if she went to visit Helen, but she says she couldn't because she feels too close to her. James goes home and was sitting on the balcony as Catherine tries to tell him that he can't go for a drive. After Catherine left for work, James went to see his crashed car where he saw Helen, who was also looking for her husband's car. She examines James's car as he tells her not to hurt her gloved hand, and she jerks it away from him. On the road, James is driving and he asks where they are going. Helen tells him to drive to the airport. She tells him that death in the doctor's family makes the patients uneasy. James asks why she is wearing a gown, but she answers him harshly. She then tells him that she works in the immigration department at the airport. She offers him a cigarette, but he declines. James complains about the traffic, and Helen tells him that the day she left the hospital, she felt that all the cars were gathering for some special reason that she didn't understand. She noticed the traffic being 10 times worse than it was. Helen tells James that he bought himself the same kind of car again, the same shape and color. Then they were about to get into an accident before Helen took the wheel and they stopped. Helen and James parked at the airport garage, and they started to make love in the car.
Here behind the seats was a very sophisticated
Helen and James are at a car show where the host is the doctor who checked James's bruises at the hospital. Vaughn kept on to explain a background story of a man named James Dean who died in a car crash. His friend Seagrave is supposed to play Dean's part, while he plays Dean's mechanic Rolf Vutherick, who was sent over from the Porsche factory in Germany. The mechanic of the car died in a car crash in Germany 26 years later. Both, Vaughn and Seagrave, are not wearing helmets or safety padding, and the cars are not equipped with roll cages or seat belts. They recreated the crash incident very well, and the crowd that's gathered cheered for them. James asks Helen if they're really hurt, or if it's for the show, but she doesn't know for sure either. After being quiet for a bit, Vaughn tells the crowd that Rolf Vutherick was thrown from the car. He finishes his speech by saying that Dean died of a broken neck and became immortal. And the Department of Transport arrived and the crowd dispersed.
It's the Department of Transport.
Helen and James went into the woods with Vaughn and Seagrave, who hit his head hard. Vaughn explains that the Department of Transport has no idea who they are, and that's why they want to ruin their fun night. They drive off in a car. They arrive at Vaughn's workshop, and they set Seagrave on a couch. Vaughn then asks him to do Jane Mansfield crash with him. It involves decapitation and a dead dog. Seagrave agrees and tells him he'll be ready. Vaughn asks James for help and they go to the back. He shows him his new project and a girl named Gabrielle, one of the girls sitting in the other room. James then found pictures of him in the hospital and making love to Helen in his car. Gabriel walks in, and she has iron and leather holding her legs. James asks what Vaughn's project is really about, and Vaughn simply explains that it is something they are all intimately involved in, the reshaping of the human body by modern technology. Catherine is stopped at a traffic light while James is behind her. Vaughn comes up behind her and starts to chase her and circles around her once the light turns green. James was following behind them and watched the whole thing. Catherine stops her and Vaughn follows but leaves once he sees James. James and Catherine are in their house making love, and she keeps on talking about Vaughn, and if James has seen his private parts and whether he wants to make love to him or not. James and Helen finished making love in the car. Helen James joined Vaughn and his friends in his workshop. They were watching a car crash video, and Helen gets upset when the player stops working. She fixed it and continued watching while getting excited about it. James and Vaughn went out for a drive. Vaughn says that he always wanted to get into a car crash with a history. He gave James a file with pictures of different accidents. He shows him Dean's accident and the Jane Mansfield accident, which he and Seagrave have planned on doing next. James finds it all very satisfying for reasons he doesn't know about. They run into a hooker, and James drove as the two of them get intimate in the back seat. Catherine came to get James from a motel. She tells James that the police have been questioning Vaughn about an accident that happened at the airport. A pedestrian was killed, and they think it happened intentionally, but James tells her that Vaughn isn't interested in pedestrians. James goes over to Vaughn and suggests that he drive. Catherine watches his scared body as Vaughn takes off his shirt. They got on the road and found a car accident. Vaughn was very excited and he was taking pictures of everything. Catherine goes over and sits with a lady who's been injured in the crash. James saw Vaughn taking pictures of Catherine in a car. Vaughn sees Seagrave inside the car while he is taking pictures and learns that he did the Jane Mansfield crash without him. James found some blood on the car they were driving, and they decided to go to an all-night car wash place. Once they get there, Catherine and Vaughn start making love in the back seat. Vaughn was rough on her, and James was watching the whole thing. At night, back in their home, Catherine lies in bed. Gabrielle and James went to check out cars. Gabrielle wanted to see if she could fit into a car designed for a normal body and asked the salesman to help her with it. While she was getting in, she got stuck and made the salesman help her get in. She was trying to seduce him, and she started touching James while the salesman's hand made contact with her body. Soon, James made love to Gabrielle in the car. James was in his office when he got a call from Vaughn. He tells James that he needs to see him and talk about the project. James went to Vaughn where he was getting a tattoo of a car on his scar. Vaughn tells the tattooist to make it ragged and dirty, as it is a prophetic tattoo, not a medical tattoo. She asks if the prophet is a personal prophecy or a global prophecy, but he tells her that there's no difference to it. Vaughn tells James to get one as well. After they leave the tattoo place, Vaughn opens up James's tattoo on his thigh and kisses it before they start making out in the car parked on the dark road. After they are done with their intimate session, James leaves the car and goes into a wrecked car. Vaughn starts his car and crashes into the car James is in repeatedly before he drives off. James spent the night in the car. Back at their house, Catherine joins James at the balcony and tells him what had happened to her car. They went to see it and it had been hit on one side. James checks out the spot and tells her it was Vaughn who did it when she asks if it could have been deliberate. They went out for a drive and James questioned what had happened to the traffic since there was no car in sight. Catherine tells him that she wants to go back with a shaky voice. Vaughn is sitting in his car by the side of the road, waiting for Catherine's car to pass by. Once he notices it, he starts his car and follows them. He then tries to crash their car, following them from behind, but his car goes over the bridge. James goes over to check it out, and the car is on fire. Helen and Gabrielle went to Vaughn's car, which crashed, got into the car. James and Catherine go to register a claim and he asks if there's any form he should fill, but the man tells him to come at a specific time to register a claim. He asks what his attachment is to that thing, and Catherine replies saying a close friend of theirs owned it. The man tells them that there's nothing they could possibly do with it and that it is going to be a total write-off. James got Vaughn's car and went out for a drive. He starts to follow Catherine and she takes her seatbelt off when she sees James behind her. He catches up to her and starts crashing into her car from behind. Catherine's car loses its balance and goes over to the other side where it crashes. James goes back to check on her and finds the car upside down. Catherine is lying on the grass passed out and her dress is halfway up. The movie ends as James asks if Catherine is okay and whether she is hurt. She tells him she is alright in a weak voice as he starts to kiss her and touch her. He then makes love to her right there on the grass next to the crashed car. Did this story spook you out? Let us know in the comments below. For more horror movie recaps, subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next one. Fear awaits you.